I know. You're probably a little confused reading that title. The guy is a walking American flag. How could he not represent the country? From a surface level glance, of course a guy named Captain America would seem that way to most people, but there's a lot more to this character that any diehard Cap fan could tell you. Or really anyone who has paid attention to pretty much any movie starring Captain America. Wait, why are people even arguing over this in the first place? Is this not the most obvious thing ever? Seriously, this should not even be a debate, but because of some comments Anthony Mackie made, the internet lost its mind. You may remember this from a few weeks ago, but it takes a while to make videos, okay? I can only talk about it now that the discourse has all died down already. But this video needed to be made. On the press tour, Anthony said the following: Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term America should be one of those representations. It's about a man who keeps his word, who has honor, dignity, and integrity. Someone who is trustworthy and dependable. It's kind of like an aspect of a dream come true. And for some off-the-cuff remarks, that's a really great understanding of the character. And who better to tell us about what this hero represents than the guy playing him? Surely that very reasonable message was received well by the public, right? And nobody took it out of context or tried to use it to fuel an agenda. God, I hate that this is even a thing. But people took that first part of the quote and immediately went into overtime running a smear campaign. Thousands of tweets talking about how Captain America hates America now, or whatever kind of twisted nonsense you could imagine. This quote made headlines everywhere as it was blown out of proportion by the most annoying people you know. This shouldn't have been an issue in the first place. Let me make this loud and clear. Captain America doesn't represent America. It's an easy misconception to make if you're not paying attention or watching and reading with your eyes closed, but allow me to break it down for you in depth and through the lens of a silly YouTube video. There's a very famous panel that I think sums things up in the most simple way possible. He's loyal to nothing except the dream. He doesn't represent a country, rather what the country should be. It's a very small distinction that means a world of difference. The United States is flawed to a scary degree. Anyone can tell you that. Captain America would be a very flawed man if he stood for the values our country currently does. And as we know, Captain America is a flawless man who has never done anything wrong in his life. Either of them for that matter. Captain America stands for the ideals that America should embody. He's the poster child for all things good, a champion of the oppressed, and someone who always looks out for the little guy. Being Captain America means being a good person and fighting for what's right. He knows what it's like to be bullied. He's seen fascist regimes rise and the scary levels of power they can hold with hate in their hearts. Captain America stands against that because it's the right thing to do. He's not a perfect soldier following the country's orders. He's just a good man who wants to help people. It doesn't matter if the world tells him that he's wrong. If he knows what he's doing is right, then he'll plant himself like a tree and stand for it. The ultimate underdog in every sense of the word. It's what makes him so special. And none of that is because of the colors he wears. It's because of who he is as a person. He's the moral compass of the Marvel universe, and sometimes those morals align with the direction the country is going. But more often than not, it's a completely different set of beliefs. He's no stranger to operating outside the law because he'll do whatever it takes when it comes to protecting people and doing the right thing. The United States has shifted away from the original promise of what the American dream is, but Captain America hasn't. He puts his faith in people, not the government. He's an inspiration to every citizen and a promise that standing for what you believe in is worth it. Look at me right now. Look at me straight in the face and tell me that Captain America would represent what the country is today. You can't! And that's not just because this is a one-way conversation and I can't see you right now, but because we all know what that mantle means. At the end of the day, he's a good person who just so happens to be wearing red, white, and blue. The beliefs he stands for are universal, not specific to just one country. It's why the character is so beloved around the world. Imagine being so inspirational that people can look past the fact that you're covered in the American flag because you're just that damn likable. That is Captain America, a beacon of hope who refuses to look the other way when he sees a situation going south, and we are all better off for it. Take one look at MCU Steve Rogers and you'll see exactly what I mean. He could not give less of a shit about America. The first Avenger is the only movie where we see him as the patriotic star-spangled man with a plan, but part of his arc in that film is becoming disillusioned with the government. He goes from someone who was incredibly desperate to join the armed forces to a guy happily willing to disobey them when he gets tired of being a helpless propaganda machine. And even when he was that scrawny kid, his motivations were never out of blind patriotism. All Steve wanted to do was stop bullies. He just happened to get caught in a side quest that turned him into the country's biggest mascot. It's through tour after tour after tour of following his new orders that he becomes frustrated with the country for not letting him help people. It's only after he saves the hostages that Captain America is truly born, and Steve can finally live up to his full potential. There's a small moment with him and Bucky in the bar that I think sums this character up really well.
You ready to follow Captain America into the jaws of death?
Hell no.
Fellow guy from Brooklyn who was too dumb not to run away from a fight. I'm following him.
Bucky doesn't take the Captain America title seriously. Both he and Steve know that it's nothing more than goofy propaganda, but that mantle has given Steve the abilities and platform to do what he's always wanted to ever since he was that scrawny kid too proud to run away from a fight. And while Steve has changed a lot since then, I mean, those abs don't come naturally, he still holds those same morals, now just with a smoking six-pack and those insane pecs. But it's his ideals that inspire Bucky to charge into the jaws of death to face the impossible. Because with Steve Rogers by your side, anything is possible. If that scene doesn't spell it out for you, I don't know what will. You might just be watching movies wrong. All that matters is who Steve is as a person and the actions he takes to make the world a better place. This becomes abundantly clear when you track his journey throughout the MCU to see just how little he cares about this country. The only time he ever has anything to say about politics, it's when they're hurting people and restricting freedoms. It's not like he's out here carefully paying attention to large-scale policies or endorsing political candidates. He cares about individuals and is doing everything he can to help them in spite of what the country wants. I mean, Christ, his entire arc in the MCU is about rebelling against the government. The world he came back to 70 years later is very different from the one he left, as the dream he once believed in has been smothered. But that won't stop Steve Rogers. He doesn't hesitate to stand his ground against S.H.I.E.L.D. when they launch Project Insight because he doesn't agree with punishing someone before the crime is even committed and controlling people through fear. And that's before he ever even finds out that they're secretly Hydra. It obviously makes his decision a lot easier when the Nazi group is controlling things, but he was ready to square up with S.H.I.E.L.D. alone. By the end of that movie, he's willing to burn it all down because he knows systemic change is the only way real progress can be made. Those themes carry over into Civil War in the most blatant possible ways, as Steve refuses to sign the Accords from the moment they're introduced. It doesn't matter to him that 117 countries are in favor of the Accords being a thing. It's a level of control he isn't comfortable with because it means people can stop him from helping those in need. He's already experienced that once before, and he damn well won't go through that again. Not to dredge up old discourse from nearly a decade ago, which pains me to say by the way, but Team Cap was right, and if you don't agree, you missed the point of the movie. I don't care if Iron Man had the better team comp, even Tony switched sides by the end of the movie. There's a different conversation to be had about the whole Bucky fiasco, but that's a conversation for another time. What matters now is that Steve Rogers is an anti-government king and proud of it. He doesn't hesitate to give up the shield at the end of Civil War because that wasn't what mattered to him. It's obviously a powerful symbol to see the guy holding it help out those in need, but Steve never needed the shield to do that kind of stuff. He's still just as capable and helpful because he stands for people, not a flag. He's entirely motivated by his desire to do good. Countries never even cross his mind when considering what's right. You have to be truly delusional if you think Steve Rogers has ever stood for America in the slightest. I don't understand how people can so blindly consume something that they miss the entire point of the movie they're watching. The whole not a perfect soldier but a good man line says it all. There's no debate to this. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills seeing people argue about this. Look past his name for a single second and just consider the motivations here. There's no shortage of examples to prove this stuff, but one scene I really love comes from the ever underrated Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes where Captain America is talking to Spider-Man. I'm just gonna play the clip and pray that Marvel don't sue me into oblivion, because there's no way I can do this justice.
It doesn't matter what the newspapers say or the politicians or the whole world. They don't define who you are. You do. And not by your words, but by your actions. The truth will come out, but until then, I'm going to keep fighting, just like you do.
It's the exact kind of Captain America speech you want to hear that perfectly embodies what this character represents. All that matters to Steve is what he's doing is right, and his actions are going to show that. It's such a powerful sentiment that rings true to his core, and I think it explains it in a really simple way. We need to pass a law that makes it so everybody who speaks on Captain America has to watch this clip first because it needs to be drilled into their heads. And then also just make it so they legally have to watch Earth's Mightiest Heroes because it's so peak and I miss it every day. Never forget what they took from you. And some of you might point out that this discourse involves Sam Wilson, not Steve Rogers. But people love to compare the two and act like Steve was this patriotic poster child, and that Anthony saying Captain America doesn't represent America is sacrilegious when it's very in line with what Cap has been in the past. And throughout his 11 11 years in the MCU, Sam Wilson has always stood against the government. In Winter Soldier, he comes out of retirement to join Steve's crusade against S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. In Civil War, he's the first person arguing against the Accords for how restrictive they are. In Infinity War, he's on the run from the government and part of Steve's Avengers as they help people on a global level. And then I guess he's dead in Endgame, but we've all been there, you can't really hold that against him. When we next see him in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or Tafaspu, as I like to call it, he's protesting against the government's personal Captain America. You can't get more on the nose than that. We directly get to see what it's like when the United States does have their own Captain America and how he differs from Steve. Walker is happy to take orders and has a lot less agency than Steve ever did, as he needs approval for things and is still doing propaganda. He's a walking bulldozer with a short temper, involving himself in situations where he shouldn't be and handling it all through careless violence. Contrast that with Sam, who immediately made it clear that he doesn't support this. Sam's first instinct is never to punch his way out of a situation. He's able to see through it all to the person behind things. His greatest superpower is his empathy, as he leads with compassion and does everything he can to make sure people get the help they need. Sam is a good man with a strong moral compass. He's trustworthy, reliable, and the exact kind of everyman you want as the face of the country. He didn't need the shield to embody those ideas, but having that kind of person holding it is a very heavy burden of responsibility that only he is built for. He also takes on a whole new level of representation as a black man carrying the stars and stripes. He's able to reach people who have never seen themselves before and make them feel important just by being himself. It's an important platform that he doesn't take for granted and uses it to instill hopeful ideals, not orders from the government. This trend continues in Brave New World too, as we almost immediately see Sam go rogue. It didn't matter that Ross wanted him to lead a government-sanctioned Avengers team because Sam knows they aren't puppets. And when Isaiah is wrongfully imprisoned, Sam jumps at the chance to go off book and help his friend. Ross even tries to arrest Sam for that, but he never once hesitates because he knows it's the right thing to do. He could not care less about what the president of the country wants, and I think that is such a powerful idea and really cool to see Captain America directly doing. It doesn't matter how many people hate him for holding the shield, he knows that he needs to carry on that legacy and continue inspiring hope into the individuals that need it, into the individuals who are desperate for that kind of symbol. No matter if it's Steve Rogers or Sam Wilson, they've both always stood for the people, not the shady governments trying to hurt them. It's what I love so much about this character. There's genuinely nothing more inspiring than seeing someone standing against an entire country for what they believe in. I feel like a lot of this mischaracterization comes from the way Captain America is often portrayed by people who don't get the character. As much as he obviously should be someone who fights for the little guy, that unfortunately isn't always the case, and it's done a lot of damage to his public perception. Sometimes we get bad writers who treat him like some kind of government lapdog, which couldn't be further from the truth. I just made a whole video talking about that. You know this by now. And if you don't, did you just get here? Did you skip into the video? What are you doing, man? These characters should not be judged by their worst interpretation. That would be like if I got mad at Robert Pattinson saying Batman shouldn't kill because of this one comic where he does kill someone. Like, yeah, I guess you're right, he has killed before, but you're also kinda dumb if that's how you look at this stuff. It's about the character's entire history and their motivations, and simply put, Captain America doesn't just go around doing the country's bidding. And I feel like way too many people think that's just how he is for some reason. Despite most of his stories having him go against the government, making it clear how he believes in people, media literacy is dead and ignorance killed it. I'm so tired of this. I can't keep seeing these bad takes everywhere. But unfortunately, this controversy wasn't started by fans. Forgive me if this video is a little politically charged, but we're dealing with a character called Captain America here. Politics is kind of his whole thing. It's never been more evident to me that this discourse is being fueled by right-wing grifters trying to tear Captain America Brave New World down for the sheer reason that a black man is Captain America. Despite the fact that he's been Captain America for over a decade now in the comics. People just can't seem to adapt with the times, and it is beyond frustrating to see them continue to grasp onto every single little thing they can to try and twist this narrative against Sam Wilson. It doesn't matter if he's the perfect choice to continue the legacy of Steve Rogers and embodies everything that Captain America should. Racists will always go out of their way to make their voice the loudest, and it sucks. But here's the thing. I know this is entirely based on race because Chris Evans had very similar comments to make all the way back in 2011 when he first took on the role. And I quote, "Well, to me, I'm not trying to get too lost in the American side of it. This isn't a flag-waving movie. It is red, white, and blue, but it just so happens that the character was created in America during wartime when there was a common enemy, even though it is Captain America. I've said before in interviews, it feels more like he should just be called Captain Good." You know, he was created at a time when there was this undeniable evil, and this guy was kind of created to fight that evil. I think everyone could agree that Nazis were bad, and he, Cap, just so happens to wear the red, white, and blue. Chris basically said the exact same and correct sentiments that Anthony did, but there was no uproar. He just happened to say it in a simple and playful way, while Anthony took things much more seriously, but nobody pretended like Chris hated the country or that he was doing a bad job with the character for his 8-year run as Steve Rogers. A very specific group of people were just looking for any reason to hate our new Captain America, despite him speaking the truth, which is incredibly disheartening to see. The way I see things, it's plain and simple. If you disagree with what either of them said, you do not understand the character of Captain America. Captain America is a mirror to the country and a reminder of what people could be. He's the best of all of us and someone we can constantly look up to. It doesn't matter that he's draped in red, white, and blue. Whether he's white or black, it's still the same set of ideals being shown through action. Just now with Sam Wilson holding the shield, millions of other people get to see themselves in Captain America for the first time ever, and that's a big deal. His morals transcend the country and turn him into a global icon. He's an inspiration because of the way he acts, not because of the flag he bears. And anyone who says otherwise is not worth listening to and won't survive the winter if I have anything to say about it. Okay, that's enough yapping from me. Why don't you let me know what your take on Captain America is? I would genuinely love to hear what everyone has to say and continue the conversation down below. And while you're at it, you may as well give the video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. No vague threat at the end of the video this week. It's not what Captain America would want. Unless...